A woman in Indiana is facing felony charges, accused of giving a 12-year-old she was babysitting drugs, molesting her, and then forcing her to engage in sex acts with grown men. We're taking a closer look at the court documents in this case with criminal defense attorney Brad Banks. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A 21-year-old from Bloomington, Indiana is locked up on some heinous charges. This is after police say she took advantage of a child in her apartment complex under the guise of babysitting. Naomi Floren is charged with 3 counts of child molesting, 2 counts of vicarious sexual gratification with a victim under the age of 14, sexual battery with a deadly weapon, 2 counts of neglect of a dependent, promotion of child sex trafficking, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Now, court documents in this case give us some insight into what happened or allegedly happened at the College Square Apartments over about a week's time earlier in July. And we want to warn you, it is really disturbing, but it goes a long way to explaining the charges that Floren faces. And for that, I want to bring in Indianapolis criminal defense attorney Brad Banks to talk to me about this. Brad, thank you so much for coming on. First, can we just talk about the charges? That long list of really serious and egregious charges. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in these type of situations where you have these sort of, like you said, crazy over-the-top allegations, they're going to throw everything they can at the defendant, and I think that's what you see here. Whatever charges they could go after her with, they've thrown it in the mix.
Yeah, and if convicted, I imagine we're talking just decades in prison, if I'm looking at that.
Yeah, I would say there's a good chance of that if she gets hit with the most serious charges. There's I'd say in the 20-year range would be something you'd probably see in this type of a case. I mean, this is an unusual set of circumstances. So.
Unusual is an interesting word. I'm going to say disgusting, as I'm about to get into.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
let's
20-some years of doing this. Yeah, I've never seen something like it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it, and then let's break it down and get your reaction to each part, because it's
sure.
So, the detective in this case submitted this probable cause statement to the court in order to get an arrest warrant. And it says, according to the document, victim 1 was staying with her 4 siblings as well as her mother and stepfather at her grandmother's apartment. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this is a 12-year-old. The document states between July 3rd and July 9th, victim 1 and her siblings began spending time with Naomi Belle Floren, who they referred to as a babysitter. Now, detectives did a forensic interview with victim 1 and at least 2 of her siblings, and victim 1 told police that one of her siblings had told Floren that victim 1 was 14. Apparently, this was kind of a running gag, but victim 1 was apparently used to it, so she didn't correct the age. But remember what her real age is here, 12. Now, referring back to the document, it states, quote, Bella invited a male friend, whose name is unknown, to hang out with them. This male is believed to be 17 years old, and Bella told him that victim 1 was 15 years old. While they were hanging out, the male asked victim 1 if she was feeling him, and victim 1 was not sure what he meant, but replied yes. Now, the male reportedly began touching victim 1, and she told him to stop, which he did, but later, when Floren, the male, and victim 1 were in Floren's bedroom, Floren was taking photos of the victim sitting in the male's lap while he was grinding against her. And victim 1 told him again to stop and told detectives that she later deleted the photos off of Floren's phone. Victim 1 claims that Floren then had sex with the 17-year-old male in front of her. Brad, let's start there. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just better not have a babysitter. In the initial contact with the individual, setting it up, making it seem like it's 17 and 15-year-old, if that was true, is not a crime, because that's within the age range that would be legal. In Indiana, under the age of 14, it is automatically child molest. So,
is mistake of age a crime, a defense?
So yeah, for the 17-year-old in this situation, it would be. The 17-year-old is probably fine. It would be the babysitter that's going to be, and this is where you get the promoting and all those kind of charges coming into play.
But isn't that kind of grooming, right? In the sense, putting the age aside, when you have sexual relations with somebody in front of a victim, you're trying to, I've seen this before, right? It's
for sure. Yeah. No, she's setting her up to, I guess, desensitize her to
Right.
these activities. Probably, if I had to guess, with the idea of what you'll talk about later, some of the other things she's going to have this kid engage in.
Hey, I want to take a quick sidebar from Sidebar to tell you guys about Wondery's awesome podcast, American Scandal. You can listen right now and explore the biggest political corruption scheme in U.S. history. Using vivid and immersive storytelling, American Scandal retraces the bribes, players, and underhanded deals related to the Teapot Dome scandal. In 1922, newspapers reported that Secretary of the Interior Albert Fall had leased federally owned oil reserves to two of the nation's wealthiest oil barons, Edward Doheny and Harry Sinclair. Fall had made the deals to enrich himself, and all three men were charged with defrauding the U.S. government. The scandal, named after one of the oil reserves in Wyoming, would eventually send Sinclair to prison for contempt of Congress and jury tampering, and made Fall the first person ever convicted of a crime committed while serving in the U.S. cabinet. Follow American Scandal on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge this season, American Scandal Teapot Dome, early and ad-free right now at wondery.fm/LC Sidebar. So the document goes on to state, quote, during this occasion of hanging out with this male, Bella gave victim one an unknown pill, which victim one believes came from a prescription of Bella's. The male also rolled a blunt and passed it to victim one, at which point victim one looked at Bella for guidance, and Bella was giving her a look to smoke it, which victim one did. The male also tried to pass the blunt to victim one's younger siblings, but victim one said no to them smoking it. So Brad, so now we have drugs being introduced into the situation, and even if the 17-year-old believes the victim is older than she really is, all of those siblings are 11 years younger.
Right. Yeah, and that's where those contributing delinquency minor, those type of charges come into play. You start providing illegal substances to a minor, you're going to get charged with that across the board. So she's facing some pretty significant charges there. They could even file a neglect of a dependent type charges in these situations too, because these children were left in her care, right? So if you're supposed to be providing care to kids and you're doing these kind of things, there's no doubt that could result in felony neglect charges too. I think with some of the other charges they had, they didn't lop some of those in, but with these other minor children, now you've got her being introduced to some sort of, who knows what kind of pill, that's putting her in a compromised position, more so than you already is. I mean, imagine being in her shoes, the babysitter's like showing you sex and trying to introduce you to sex, and now introducing drugs into your system. I mean, the overwhelming just sense of dread that 12-year-old must have been going through to try to processing that. What is going on here? This is my babysitter, Yeah.
Yeah, somebody who's supposed to care for her and
right.
Responsibility. So the next day, victim one, says Floren, also known as Bella, gave her another pill and a weed vape pen to smoke, and then took her upstairs to the apartment of a man referred to as Rat Guy. That doesn't send chills down your spine. So police now say that Rat Guy is 54-year-old Matthew Brown. The probable cause statement reads, victim one indicated that Bella told her that she does things for Matthew in exchange for money to help pay for rent. When victim one and Bella got to Matthew's apartment, Bella took her shirt off, exposing her breasts. And victim one asked Bella if she should take her shirt off, and Bella told her to. Now, we're not going to get into the details of what happens next because it's just way too graphic and upsetting, but victim one accuses both Floren and Matthew Brown of sexual assault. Victim one told police that Floren again took photos of her during the sex acts, and Matthew gave victim one and Floren each a $20 bill on the way out, but Floren allegedly took victim one's $20 and kept it for herself. Brad, how disgusting is that?
Yeah, now you're getting into those promotion, child trafficking type charges when you're taking your victim and sharing them, if you will, with the Rat Guy or whatever his name is. And again, the 12-year-old is getting exposed to all this stuff, and then taken to somebody she's already knows as the Rat Guy. So obviously there's a negative connotation with this guy before she even goes up there. And now she's being introduced to more sexual contact with him. Just a nightmare from her situation. I do think it'll be interesting to see. The gentleman's 54 years old. The report says at some point he thinks, oh wait, she might not be the age that I'm being told she is, and asks them to leave. 17-year-old being told an age and doing something with somebody versus a 54-year-old not realizing somebody is 12 years old, I think is going to be a tougher sell for him. And I would be surprised if he isn't facing some charges for his involvement in this as well.
It's interesting you say that. We couldn't confirm that, whether he or anybody else has been facing charges other than Floren. And clearly, I mean, I'll also add that's why she's facing the molestation charges as well when you hear stuff like this. Yeah, we just don't know if at this point he is facing charges. But let me go back to this. So victim 1 claims that this was not the end of her torture. No, she says the next night, Floren took her to another apartment. And although she wasn't sure which one it was, there were 2 men there. And she says Floren gave her another unknown pill, and that all 4 of them smoked marijuana and drank alcohol. Remember, she's 12 years old. Again, I just want to reemphasize that. Now, victim 1 says that she was incredibly impaired, but remembers one of the men raping her, 12-year-old child. According to victim 1, Floren told the men the girl was 18. So now I guess, we're talking, Brad, they don't know that she's not younger than 18. Again, is the mistake of age a defense really here? And really the emphasis is put on Floren here because she knows the truth. But what was your take on this?
Yeah, this is a real interesting part of the case because, at least from what I read in the police reports and the probable cause, they don't even know who these 2 individuals are yet, or they're not identified in the paperwork. So if they're able to identify them, Indiana has a new law that just went into effect where if basically you can be convicted of rape if the person is unable to consent. So even if you believed a 12-year-old was of age, which is hard to imagine, but even if you believed that, this intoxication she's being put under now would put it in a category potentially still of a rape charge because she's impaired. And she really expresses in that police report that this time around, whatever drug she was given, she's really out of it. I mean, she's really feeling intoxicated. And, at 12 years old, it's just not things you would know. I mean, you would know this is something unusual, right? Because you're getting exposed to this. And again, the babysitter is exposing her to other atrocious behavior. And it's just crazy. Now, and you'll probably get into this, but there's some evidence they find that makes it seem like
you're leading me right into it. Let me talk about this. So, police, they end up searching Floren's apartment, and they interview her and they interview Matthew Brown. And according to the affidavit, Brown said that Floren told him this 12-year-old was really 21 years old, but he told police he started to think that wasn't true. Okay. And in addition to multiple bottles of prescription pills found in Floren's apartment, police also seized her cell phone. And the detective states in the court documents, quote, "I asked Bella if she had any pictures on her phone that would be concerning, and she advised that she did not, other than pictures of drugs. I asked for Bella's consent for her passcode, which she provided. I ultimately was able to access her phone, and in the recently deleted folder of the photos album, I located numerous photos of Bella and victim 1 exposing their breasts." And the document concludes most of Floren's description of what happened when victim 1 was with her was all consistent with victim 1's description of the people and places they visited. However, while they were all consistent, other than what Floren admitted to happening at Matthew's residence, she denied the other sexual allegations. So, the account, Brad, is one thing, but the evidence is another thing as well.
Yeah, and this is where, the cases that involve sex crimes are always tough, right? Because a lot of times the state or the prosecutor just has the victim's statement, right? And that's it. There's no DNA. There's the rape kit comes back without any evidence that's very helpful. There's no other supporting information. But when you have evidence like this, where the victim's story is being corroborated by these photographs, and then you've got the babysitter lying about the photograph's existence, and she tried to trash them and just didn't realize your pictures don't do anything other than go in a deleted folder. Now you've got this consciousness of guilt with her. You've got this evidence that corroborates the victim's story. And so now that's why I think the police are going to take very seriously these other allegations involving these two other gentlemen that they haven't, doesn't look like they've necessarily fully pieced together yet. But I think they're going to believe everything this little girl's had to say.
It's hard to imagine that people do this. I know these are allegations. She's innocent until proven guilty, but taking them as true, it's always, every time I cover these cases, it's hard to imagine that people subject children to this and abuse children like this. But I am curious, given these heinous charges, very serious charges, in your experience, would a plea deal be on the table? And why do I say that? I say that so many times because do you want to expose these children, particularly this 12-year-old, to having to testify about this? The pain, the heartache of going through it. And is that fair? A plea deal? Should she get a plea deal after what she's accused of doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something the prosecutor always has to take into account. Is you want justice, you want this person to be in prison as long as possible, but you also don't want to put the 12-year-old through the dramatic process of sitting in front of 12 strangers in front of this scary courtroom and having to explain it all over again and relive the whole events again in their life. So, one of the things that defendants get a mitigation in their sentence or something the judge is supposed to consider is when they take responsibility for their actions. Part of that is in part because you're not making the victim have to relive those terrible things that have happened to them. So usually they'll give some sort of incentive in a plea. Not uncommon to see one that has like a cap of executed time in prison so that the defendant can argue for something less. Yeah. All sides knowing most likely that there's going to be a pretty harsh sentence in a case like this, but it gives something for the defendant to work with, and it saves the victim the trauma of having to relive this. Because you know how these cases work. This girl's hopefully going to get in some counseling and some therapy and be 9 months to a year into that, and then that's when a trial would probably happen. And now you've taken all that good work they've done and undone it if she has to go and relive it in front of 12 strangers.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Such a sad case. Horrible, horrible stuff. So, Brad, before we end things, by the way, you looked into this case and there was another charge that Floren was facing?
Yeah, there's another charge that looks like it happened after this one, probably while it was under investigation for a theft from a Kroger, where a Kroger store clerk approached her because she was shopping in the Kroger with her dog in the store. The dog defecated somewhere in the store and she didn't clean it up. And so the Kroger store worker confronted her with it, and she refused to address it and just left the store without paying for any of her stuff in her cart.
Wow.
So, a lot going on with this young lady.
Apparently. All right. Well, she's facing a lot of trouble. Brad Banks, thanks for coming on, breaking it down for us, researching for us. Really appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Have a good one.
All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.